Okay, today we are talking about integers. An integer is basically another word for a whole number. The word integer I find sometimes confuses students. Actually, let me make that lower because they're like, well, why don't we just say number? Well, the truth is that an integer is a certain kind of number. It is a whole number, meaning it can't be a fraction and it can't be a decimal, because a decimal number is a fraction. So 1 is an integer. 3 is an integer. 1.2, not an integer. 3 4/5, not an integer. So hopefully you get the idea. It's a whole number. And 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let me write in some numbers here. So here is a number line, and as I am writing these integers on the number line, you will see that I have written negative numbers. And for those who are new to this concept of negative numbers, don't worry. They're actually really fun to work with. So sometimes students say, well, why do we need to know about negative numbers? Like, how is a negative number a number? Well, the truth is that we actually in the real world deal with negative numbers all the time. Just to give you a quick example, I used to live in Canada where it got very, very cold, and they use Celsius. Here in the United States, we use Fahrenheit. In Canada, they use Celsius to measure temperature, which I think is very convenient. And with Celsius, let me spell that out so you know what I mean, which measures temperature. At 0 degrees, and note, you saw that I made this little circle. That actually is the sign for degrees. At 0 degrees, water freezes. And it freezes a lot over there because it's very, very cold. The equivalent, by the way, is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, in case you're trying to get a sense of, if you're trying to understand what it means, Fahrenheit. So just to give you an idea. So, well, if water freezes at 0 degrees, then one thing that's very helpful when, for instance, if you live in a cold climate, and you want to know what the temperature is like outside, if the temperature, I'll draw a little thermostat here. If the temperature is 10 degrees, you know it's cold, but you know that it's not so cold that water will freeze as soon if you put a glass outside. But if it's minus 10 or negative 10, we could say, if it's negative 10 degrees, which it is there where I used to live, then you know that not only is it cold, it is literally freezing cold. Freezing cold is a term we all know because it means that it is so cold that water will freeze outside. We also use negative numbers. Banks use negative numbers all the time. For instance, if let's say I'm making up an imaginary person named Harry. I don't know how I came up with that name. And let's pretend Harry collects rare gems. Right now, he has $50 in his bank account. He ended up going to a store, a special rock and gem store, and he ended up spending, not really checking his bank account, he ended up spending $70. Well, as you can see, he has spent more than he has in his bank account, but banks don't care. So they will actually show that his account has negative $20 in it. And then Harry will go to the bank or check his bank statement. He'll see that he has negative $20 and he'll say, oh, I better deposit some money in there right away because I am in the negative zone. So those are just a few ways that we work with negative numbers. Now, one thing about negative numbers is let's say you are adding or subtracting, and this is something that you will be doing a lot of, so I hope I can make this lesson clear as possible. Let's say you're at the number 3. I want a good arrow, 3. And let's say you do 3 plus 1. Well, we know 3 plus 1 brings us to 4, right? What about 3 plus negative 1? Well, you could think of it like this. Negative on a number line means you go left. And positive on a number line means you go rightward. Okay? So 3 plus negative 1 means 3, and then you go left. You're going in a negative direction. You're going in the negative direction. So 3 plus negative 1 actually equals 2. Let's do some more examples. Let me do a different kind of number line. I feel like that one is a little cluttered. Oops. Okay, now we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And by the way, 0 is an integer. People ask that question. 0 is indeed an integer. What if I have 1 plus negative 1? Well, let's look at our number line. 1 plus negative 1 means we go one step backwards on the number line. 1 plus negative 1 is 0. What if we have, oops, didn't mean to do that, 2 plus negative 2? Well, let me erase this thing, okay? And here we are at 2, and then we're going 2 jumps backwards because we've got the negative sign. That means we go left, 1, 2. Well, that's also 0. That's also 0. So you might notice a pattern here. 1 plus negative 1 equals 0. 2 plus negative 2 equals 0. And what you're actually seeing is that 1 and negative 1 are called opposite numbers. Opposite numbers. 2 and negative 2 are opposite numbers. 3 and negative 3 are opposite numbers. Opposite numbers added together equal 0. Another way to think about them is that they are the same distance from the integer 0 on a number line. So 150 and negative 150 are also opposite numbers. They're the same number with different signs. And you might be thinking, well, this 150 doesn't have a sign. Well, oftentimes when we are working with positive and negative numbers, we can say that a number is, well, we'll do the opposite numbers 3 and negative 3. We actually can insert the positive sign there to keep track of our what our signs are. And sometimes we do that to make it easier or to make it helpful. A lot of times we don't keep this, it's just assumed that the number is positive. But if it's helpful, for sure, add that positive sign. So for instance, going back to our number line up here, this number 2 can also be a plus 2. Could also do it that way. And we're going to stop there. In a follow-up video, you are going to learn how to add and subtract integers without even using a number line. There are some tricks to being able to do that. I personally really like working with integers. I think they're interesting and fun, and I hope you do too.